Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. Today, we're diving into a topic that every English learner struggles with at some point: how to remember English words faster.
Absolutely. Vocabulary is the foundation of communication, but it's also one of the hardest things to retain. You might learn a word today, and by tomorrow, it's gone from your memory.
That's why we want to share some practical strategies that actually work, based on how the brain stores and recalls information. From memory tricks to daily habits, these techniques can help you retain more words without feeling overwhelmed.
And we're not just talking about rote memorization. We'll cover ways to make learning new words fun, memorable, and connect it to real life, so your brain naturally keeps them.
So whether you're preparing for an exam, trying to speak more fluently, or just want to expand your vocabulary, this episode is packed with tips to boost your memory and make English words stick.
Let's start with one of the most powerful methods: spaced repetition. It's a technique that involves reviewing words at specific intervals, which strengthens your memory over time.
Think of it like watering a plant. You don't pour a gallon of water once and hope it survives. You water it consistently over time. Spaced repetition works the same way for your brain.
And the best part? There are apps and tools that can help you organize your words using this method, so you're not just guessing when to review them.
Another technique that really helps is creating mental associations. Instead of just memorizing a word by itself, link it to a picture, a story, or even a sound.
For example, if you want to remember the word astonished, imagine someone's jaw dropping in surprise. The stronger the image or story, the easier it is for your brain to recall the word later.
You can even get creative with silly or exaggerated images that actually helps your memory. The more unusual, the better it sticks.
We'll also talk about learning words in context, which is crucial. Instead of memorizing lists of random words, try to learn them through sentences, conversations, or even short stories.
When you see a word used naturally, your brain connects it to real situations, making it much easier to remember and use correctly.
And don't forget reviewing actively, not just reading or listening, but speaking, writing, and using the words in your own sentences. The more you produce a word, the more it becomes part of your long-term memory.
Another underrated tip is to group words by theme or topic. Learning 10 words about cooking, for example, helps your brain link them together, so recalling one word can trigger others.
And of course, repetition over time is key. Cramming might work for a test the next day, but for real fluency, you need consistent practice and exposure.
Lastly, don't underestimate the power of emotion. If a word makes you laugh, surprises you, or connects to something meaningful, your brain remembers it better.
So combining these methods, spaced repetition, mental associations, learning in context, active use, theming, and emotional connection, gives you a full toolkit for remembering English words faster.
And the best part is, once you start using these strategies, learning new words becomes less stressful and more enjoyable.
Now, let's explore some practical ways to put these methods into your daily English routine.
One easy way to integrate these strategies is through daily micro-sessions. Even 5 to 10 minutes a day, if done consistently, can make a huge difference over time.
Exactly. The key is consistency, not duration. Short, focused sessions prevent your brain from feeling overloaded and help reinforce the words you're learning.
Another tip is to use flashcards creatively. You can still use digital apps, but don't just write the word and its meaning. Add a sentence, a picture, or even a mnemonic that makes it stick.
Speaking of mnemonics, they are really powerful. For example, if you're trying to remember the word benevolent, which means kind and generous, you could think Ben never vents, he's always kind. Silly, but it works.
And don't forget about contextual practice. Try reading short articles, watching videos, or listening to podcasts where the words are used naturally. It's one thing to memorize a definition, but seeing it in action reinforces understanding.
Another approach is language immersion in small ways. Label objects in your house, narrate what you're doing in English, or describe your day. These little habits make vocabulary retrieval automatic over time.
And when you encounter a word you don't know, don't just skip it. Pause and try to guess the meaning from context, then check if you're right. This active engagement helps your memory much more than passive reading.
Also, repetition through different senses is helpful. Write the word, say it out loud, hear it in context, and even visualize it. The more pathways your brain has to access a word, the stronger the memory.
Another fun tip is to teach someone else. Explaining a word's meaning, using it in sentences, or sharing it with a friend forces your brain to recall and apply it, which strengthens retention.
And finally, keep a personal vocabulary journal. Write down new words, sentences you hear, and your own examples. Periodically review it. It becomes a personal memory bank of words that matter to you.
Combining these strategies turns learning vocabulary from a chore into an engaging, creative process. Your brain naturally starts remembering words faster, and you'll notice yourself using them in conversation without effort.
Now let's talk about tracking your progress and making vocabulary learning a habit you can stick to.
Tracking progress is huge. One simple way is to set small, achievable goals. For example, learning 5 new words a day and reviewing them at the end of the week. Seeing that tangible progress keeps motivation high.
Yes, and don't just focus on quantity. Track how well you can use the words in real sentences or conversations. Being able to recall a word on a test is one thing, but using it naturally is the real measure of retention.
You can even make it fun with apps that gamify learning. Some apps reward you for streaks, correct usage, or repeated reviews. Turning learning into a game engages your brain differently than just rote memorization.
Another tip is to connect new words to emotions or personal experiences. Your brain remembers words better if they are tied to something meaningful. For example, if you learn the word elated, recall a moment when you felt truly happy or accomplished.
Absolutely. And don't shy away from mixing active and passive learning. Read, listen, watch, and speak. The more ways your brain encounters a word, the stronger the memory connection.
And remember, it's okay to forget sometimes. Spaced repetition is key. Reviewing words after a day, then after a few days, and then after a week helps transfer them from short-term to long-term memory.
Also, engage with native content. Watch shows, listen to podcasts, or read articles in English. Highlight words you don't know and then actively work them into your own sentences. This bridges passive recognition and active use.
One more strategy is to group words thematically. For example, learn words related to emotions, food, travel, or work together. Our brains often remember them better when they are connected by a theme rather than in random lists.
Lastly, review in context, not isolation. Instead of only memorizing definitions, try recalling the situations, sentences, or conversations where the word fits. Context creates mental hooks that make words easier to retrieve when you need them.
By combining all these methods, mnemonics, context, immersion, spaced repetition, and active use, you're setting yourself up for faster, more reliable vocabulary retention. Over time, English words stop feeling like foreign objects and start becoming natural tools in your daily communication.
And don't forget the power of teaching others. Explaining a word or phrase to someone else forces you to process it deeply, reinforcing your memory. You don't need a classroom, just a friend or even an online language partner works.
That's such a good point. Also, try visual associations. Create a mental image for a word. For instance, for the word towering, imagine a huge skyscraper next to you. The brain loves visual hooks, and it makes recall much easier.
Another technique is using words in multiple forms. If you learn happy, also use happiness and unhappy. This helps you see the word's flexibility and deepens your understanding of its meaning and usage.
And here's a fun one, make a story. Pick 5 to 10 new words and craft a short story around them. This not only helps remember the words, but also improves sentence construction and creativity.
Don't underestimate daily review sessions, even if they are short. Just 10 minutes every day of going through your word list or flashcards can be more effective than a 2-hour session once a week. Consistency beats intensity.
Yes, and keep a language journal. Write a few sentences every day using your new words. Seeing your words on paper and revisiting them over time strengthens your long-term retention.
Also, pay attention to collocations, words that naturally go together. Knowing that we say, make a decision, instead of, do a decision, helps your words feel more natural and easier to recall in conversation.
And finally, mix learning with your hobbies. If you like cooking, travel, or sports, learn words related to your interests. Your brain associates the words with something you already enjoy, making them stick better.
The key takeaway is that learning vocabulary doesn't have to be tedious. Using creative, meaningful, and consistent strategies turns memorization into something engaging and far more effective.
Absolutely, Nick. And one more strategy one love is spaced repetition apps. Tools like Anki or Quizlet remind you of words just before you're likely to forget them, which is scientifically proven to boost retention.
Right, and while apps are great, real-life application is irreplaceable. Try using new words in conversations, social media posts, or even voice notes to yourself. Speaking or writing the word cements it in your memory.
Another tip is linking words to emotions. If a word makes you laugh, feel amazed, or even frustrated, your brain remembers it better. Emotion acts like a sticky note in your memory.
And don't forget mnemonics. Making up funny phrases or acronyms can help recall tricky words. For example, to remember benevolent, you could think, Ben is very kind and generous. It's silly but effective.
Exactly. Also, grouping words thematically helps. If you're learning food-related words, study all fruits together, then all vegetables. This creates mental folders in your brain, making retrieval easier.
Plus, consider listening and reading in English regularly. When you see and hear words repeatedly in different contexts, your brain naturally remembers them without forced memorization.
And finally, be patient with yourself. Vocabulary building is a marathon, not a sprint. Celebrate small victories when you recall words correctly or use them in conversation. Positive reinforcement keeps you motivated.
So, combining all these strategies, visuals, stories, collocations, apps, real-life use, mnemonics, thematic grouping, and patience, you create a system where words stick and language learning becomes much more natural.
Absolutely, Nick. And building on that, another powerful technique is teaching others. When you try to explain a word to someone else, you're forced to process it deeply, which reinforces your memory.
That's a great point. Even if you don't have a partner, you can pretend to teach an imaginary student or write a short blog post using the new words. The act of explaining strengthens your recall.
And don't underestimate the power of visual aids. Drawing a quick sketch, associating a word with an image, or even using sticky notes around your room can trigger your memory when you see it in daily life.
Yes, and another tip is using multiple senses. Say the word out loud, write it down, listen to it in audio, and see it in text. Engaging multiple senses creates more connections in your brain, making the word harder to forget.
Absolutely. Also, creating a personal dictionary can help. Instead of just listing words, write down definitions in your own words, example sentences, and even little doodles. Reviewing this personal dictionary periodically makes learning more interactive.
And one more thing, play with words. Make small games out of your vocabulary practice. For example, try to use 5 new words in a conversation each day or create funny sentences with them. The fun element makes the brain remember better.
Exactly, Nick. Turning vocabulary learning into an enjoyable habit, rather than a chore, dramatically increases retention, and helps you recall words naturally when you need them.
And remember, consistency is key. Short daily practice sessions are much more effective than long, irregular ones. Even 10 to 15 minutes every day can make a huge difference over time.
Another strategy worth mentioning is chunking words together. Instead of memorizing single words in isolation, group them by theme, topic, or situation. For example, if you're learning words about cooking, learn boil, simmer, chop, and stir together. Your brain makes associations faster that way.
That's right, Emily. And speaking of associations, creating stories or sentences with new words is incredibly effective. Instead of remembering bizarre alone, make a sentence like, the cat wore a bizarre hat to the party. The context makes the word stick better than just rote memorization.
Exactly. Contextual learning is so much more natural. And don't forget the power of repetition in real life. Use new words in texts, chats, or social media posts. The more you actively use them, the stronger your memory becomes.
Absolutely. Also, using mnemonics can help for tricky words. For instance, if you're trying to remember gargantuan, imagine a giant gargoyle eating a huge sandwich. The mental image makes recalling the meaning much easier.
And one tip I love is linking words to emotions or personal experiences. If a word triggers a memory, a feeling, or a funny incident, it becomes far easier to recall later. The emotional connection creates a stronger imprint in your brain.
Definitely. Finally, combining all these techniques, visuals, stories, emotions, teaching others, creates a multi-layered learning process that dramatically increases how quickly and accurately you remember English words.
Exactly, Nick. It's about making vocabulary learning interactive, engaging, and relevant to your own life. When you do that, memorization stops being a chore and becomes a natural part of your everyday English use.
Another approach worth exploring is spaced repetition apps. Tools like Anki or Quizlet help you review words right before you're likely to forget them, which strengthens long-term memory. It's not just about seeing a word once, it's about seeing it at the perfect intervals.
Yes, and you can combine that with active recall. Instead of just looking at the word and meaning, try to recall the meaning before flipping the card. That tiny mental effort makes a huge difference in retention.
And don't underestimate the value of teaching others. When you explain a word to a friend or write about it in your own words, your brain processes it on a deeper level. It's like telling your brain, this word is important, remember it.
True. Another trick is using multisensory learning. Say the word out loud, write it down, hear it in a sentence, and even gesture, or draw something related to it. Engaging multiple senses helps cement the word in your memory far better than just reading it silently.
Also, pay attention to collocations, words that naturally go together. For example, make a decision instead of just decision, or take a risk instead of just risk. Learning words in these natural pairings helps you remember them more quickly and use them more accurately.
And that wraps up today's episode on how to remember English words faster. Remember, it's not about memorizing endlessly, it's about smart, consistent strategies like spaced repetition, active recall, using words in context, and engaging multiple senses.
Absolutely. Try different techniques, see what works best for you, and most importantly, enjoy the process. Learning vocabulary can be fun when you make it part of your daily life.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time with more tips to make your English learning journey smoother and more effective. Keep practicing, keep experimenting, and keep growing.